Welcome, everybody. As I was saying, greetings from Spain. Hola. Very nice to be with you. My name is Lindsay Clandfield, and as Cesar and Luis introduced me so kindly, I'm an author. I'm also an English teacher, teacher trainer, do lots of materials, teaching online, and so on and so forth. My experience in teaching was mostly in Spanish-speaking countries. So I worked in Guatemala, in Mexico, and now in Spain, but also in England, Canada, and other parts of Europe. And I'm here today to talk to you about an issue, something that I've been working on quite a lot recently and been very passionate about, is the idea of using multimedia in the classroom. So using audio and video as classroom tools to help students' oral production. I'm also going to be referring, some of this work that I did was, of course, before COVID-19 and before we were all locked down and doing things like teaching on Zoom. So some of the things I'll be talking about here, I've been experimenting more recently on how you could do them online, okay, and how this could be delivered online. So I'll be talking about both situations, classroom and online. Okay, let me get started. One of the things that that got me thinking about this, my co-author and I had been watching teachers and watching classrooms, and we were thinking of the classroom almost like, and this is an online classroom too, almost like an actor's rehearsal space. So what do we mean by that? That the classroom was almost like an actor's rehearsal space. I've often read and heard teachers talk about how sometimes they almost feel like they are acting, especially if you're teaching low-level learners. You sometimes feel like some of your teaching is like acting. You know, you're exaggerating things. You're thinking about how you project. And so the teacher, in a way, is sometimes considered an actor. But the place is also, the place of the classroom, either online or face-to-face, is like a practice space. In the same way that a studio, a rehearsal place, is a practice place. It's an empty space filled with chairs, or an empty like online room filled with people. The focus is on what is happening between the people. So in the same way that a musician or an actor in a rehearsal space are focusing on the music they're making or the scene, in the language classroom, we're focusing on the language that we're using and what's happening. And it's a learning space. So rehearsal spaces, and I'll be coming to how this works with multimedia as focusing on what is happening and creating that right space for learning. Here's an interesting quote that we thought about that my colleague, my co-author, found. I'll let you just read that for a second. And so even though this is talking about theater, here what we're thinking about is the classroom is a space where all it takes is for two people to start talking, and then the practice and the learning is happening. And I want to see how we can immerse learners more in that space. Also, we can view, as I said before, the teacher could be seen almost as an actor via the miming that you do, your voice projection, your gestures, your facial expressions. Also, we use the classroom as space, almost like a stage sometimes. Sometimes we use props. We bring things to classroom and we show things. Sometimes we like teach vocabulary using things like that. We engage students in the same way that actors do, with humor and surprise, yeah? And we direct in the same way. So as the teacher, we are often directing the students. When we say to students, now you do the dialogue. Now, Maria, you read A, and Cesar, you read B. We are directing students in the same way that a director directs actors. So there's lots of, as we would say in Spanish, parecido razonable, yeah? Lots of reasonable similarities here. And throughout this process, the students are learning and improving. And in the same way that rehearsing for the actor or the musician is to perform in the real world, like in a play or a movie or a concert, for the students, they are preparing to perform that language in the real world. So how can we do this? we can obviously, one of the ways that we're doing this is through pair work and group work, okay? And I'm going to give you some examples, but then look at how the topic here, which is multimedia, how we can enhance that via multimedia of different ways, yeah? Just in the same way that in a rehearsal studio, you may be amplifying what the people are saying via microphones, via different instruments, via different technology. We can do the same in the language classroom. We'll look at ideas of storytelling with video and voice exercises with audio, okay? And touch on reading, writing, listening, and from a script. In this case, the script, if you like, if I'm continuing with the metaphor, is the course book. This is in a way is a script that the students and the teachers have that they are following, yeah? And the course book that my colleagues and I have written that I'll be mentioning and using material from is Studio. So we even chose the name Studio because we're kind of reflecting that idea, yeah? Of the classroom is a place where you're rehearsing to practice to go into the real world. Okay. So how can we begin to warm students up towards this performing in the real world? Well, one way that language teachers do this is through pair work and group work. Okay. And so here we have different ways that we can do this. And I want to address how some teachers have found it. I've been watching teachers a lot since lockdown, and they've been finding it harder to do some of this aspect of teaching in online classrooms. It's difficult, isn't it? If you're using, even if you're using Zoom, but if you're using Microsoft Teams or Google Classroom, I've watched students and teachers across different countries trying to use these things in different ways. And some of the getting students to speak and do pair work and group work has been hard. Let's look at the kinds of exercises that we can perhaps do in face-to-face or in online classrooms. So one is we can do very simple questions, you know, ask and answer questions with a partner. This is often like a warm-up activity to a reading or a listening. In the online classroom, I think this is happening more in what we call open pair work. So when I do this in my online classes, I'm asking students openly, which means I'm saying, like, we're all in the same room together, and then I'm saying, Cesar, can you please ask the first question to Luis? Luis answers. Now, Luis, you ask another question to Maura. Maura, you ask the next question to Milena, yeah? And we keep going like that. So that's open questions. If you have breakout rooms, we can also send them off into pairs. But for this short ask and answer, it's often happening more in open classroom. We can do brainstorming type tasks to get students to do pair work or group work. Here are examples like brainstorming vocabulary, yeah, and having a couple of questions. Here, I might put students into groups in a breakout room if possible, yeah, get them to do that if possible in a breakout room. I've also done this as a warm-up where I get one student to perform to the whole class, to present something to the whole class. Either in class, I would do this in pairs. Online, I might do this one person in class. Talk about the keys you have with you, and I give some support and help for them to sort of say things, yeah? Finally, we can do puzzles and games as group work and pair work, where we blend writing and speaking. Here's an example of a game, yeah? We each take turns adding words to a sentence. So I begin, and I've done this in online classes, round one, I begin by saying every day, and then someone has to write the next word in the sentence. So they write in the chat box, every day I, and then I nominate someone else who writes, every day I go, or whatever. And then someone else says, writes, every day I go to. So we just do that until a sentence is complete, yeah? And lots of these things, as I said, are often done online in terms of open pair work, yeah, where we are getting students to participate in front of the whole group online. And that's fine, but we can go on then to do breakout rooms. Here's an example of a task that I would do in breakout rooms. You can make your own example of this kind of task very easily. I get 10 questions. Here are questions about the future. I would have asked you, can you guess the grammar? But I'll tell you, the grammar of these questions are all about the future. So I asked students to take a photo of this or to take a screenshot and keep that. And then in the breakout rooms, the instructions is this: you work in pairs or three. one person gives a number, says like, choose a number between 1 and 10. Another person says number 5. And then the person who has the questions asks, okay, what's the next big thing you were going to buy? And then the other person answers. And then someone else chooses a different question, yeah? So they call out a number at random, student B asks the questions, they swap roles and repeat. I can do this in class as well, where students eventually make their own questions, number 1 to 10, and then students ask the number and the person reads them out. Is a lot of these activities in a course book, usually lots of these pair work communicative activities. Oh, sorry, you can't see my, here it is, yes. If you look at a book, you may remember, like sometimes it says communication, student A, turn to page like 130, right? And so student B, turn to page 135. Well, with Studio, we decided to get rid of that, and we put those on PDFs that the teacher could print out if they wanted, so they were nice big pictures, or more importantly, we also put them into the app. So the app for Studio, the Helbling app, has all of these kinds of pair work activities I was just showing you. And when we did this, we weren't thinking that the whole world would be confined to houses for a while because of the pandemic, but we have noticed it's been really good for being able to do those activities. So if I have students and I put them in the breakout rooms, I can say, just use your phones to look up the, you are student A, tap on the phone, the right unit, and then do the activity together. So here's an example of what it might look like. Here's an activity, a pair work activity, where they have to see the differences between pictures. So they look at the pictures, the partner has the same pictures with differences, find 10 differences. So, they can easily do this face-to-face or sort of online on the computer. If they have their phones, they can look at the thing and then do the activity orally that way. Yeah, it's just another way of using now multimedia to deliver that kind of activity. Part here, I want to move more into now video and audio and looking at the area of role play and improvisation and how we can use video and audio to sort of enhance this. So as a teacher, as teachers, we often get students to do little role plays. These could be very simple things like pretend you are in a shop. You have to buy something and the other person is the shop assistant and you sell something, or in a restaurant. Or sometimes we get students to role play a situation where like they are at a conference or something like that, yeah? And so here I want to show you how we can actually use multimedia to sort of enhance that experience. The first one that I've started doing is actually trying to make some activities where they role play being on a video call. And then if we are in a video room, they are actually role playing it in the same way. So we're using the video room as sort of the atmosphere, yeah? So here's a sample of an activity that I did with a group where I said, you're going to prepare an imaginary video call, like a Skype call or a Zoom call that you're having with a friend. You need to choose 2 topics, and you can see the topics here, English classes, family, hobbies, sport, or places you live, work, free time, clothes, last weekend, yeah? And then I gave them some phrases, and I put these on a slide, just a bit like I did for you. So they have some slide. Hi, how are you doing? You look well. What about you? Wow, that sounds interesting. I asked them, take a photo of this, and then you need to use all the phrases. You just choose 2 of the topics, but you need to use all your phrases and prepare your conversation, your role play. Then when people come back, I then said, okay, now you're going to do this. 2 people will perform it. Everyone else turn our video off. You 2 turn the video on so we can see 2 people having a video conversation and they role play the conversation. But we're using now the situation where we are to do a sort of realistic role play. Yeah. So this is a very simple one. Here's another example of one that we can do in face-to-face class or online. In this one, I supplied some photos. So in the whole class, we were looking at these photos on the projector or on the slide. In the online class, we're looking at them on the slide. I asked students to suggest when and where they were taken. Oh, where is the breakout room? Adrienne, good. Somebody, by the way, if you write in the chat, I wasn't sure I could see, but I can see you. And so I'm going to just answer Adriana's question. It says about breakout rooms in Teams. In Teams, currently there are none. But the good news is they are coming like in the next update on Teams. So Teams and Google Classroom are all going to have breakout rooms. Yeah. And if you don't know what a breakout room is when you can separate people to put them in different like mini video rooms inside of your one, okay? So that is a coming soon feature, okay? All of the activities that I'm talking to you also can be done in the face-to-face class. And so then what I do with the students is we do what we did there. We might see the rest of the video. Watch the rest of the video with them, but I do a bit of comprehension and so on. And now they're going to role play their own scene. But the difference is when I get them to role play, oops, hold on a second. They're going to practice the role play like this. You are the customer. What are you looking for? What size do you need? Ask the student assistant for help. So they have that information. The other one is a sales assistant. Yeah. But when they're ready to present their conversation, and I used to do this in class, but now I also do it online, I say use the videoscape. And this is something new that I hadn't done in the past and I hadn't seen in books, was if you notice in this video here, the video has the actors and in the background, it's an image background. So you can see that they've got like that picture, it's just an image. But we took that image background and we made it in the book, like at the end of the video, for the students to do their presentation in front of. So for example, here, I would get the students, I would project this on the classroom wall, and I would say, prepare your presentations. Here, you are in the shop. So now imagine we are in the shop, prepare your conversations. So in a way, what I'm doing is I'm immersing the students into that scene in the classroom. So at the end of every video, wherever the actors were, the students are now in the same place and will make a similar conversation. This could be, for example, in a shop. It could be at an airport. It could be on the street asking for directions. Any of those kinds of role play conversations where you are in a place, we make the actors do it in front of a certain videoscape, and then the students do it in front of the same one. And in the online class, I put it on the whole screen like that, and then the students prepare their conversation with this so they can see it, and then two people turn their camera on and they present their conversation. So what I'm doing here is I'm using what I call videoscapes to help immerse the learners, to make them feel like they are more sort of in the place where that conversation happens. One other thing that I had been doing recently is using sound effects. So in the same way, let me look at this last slide. In the same way that this one, they're using photos to put photos or images in order for a story. It might be hard for you to do that because you need to find the pictures. I mean, we have them in studio, but if you were doing it yourself. However, what you can do is find a sound effects website, or if you have Spotify, I only found out recently, if you put in the chat box sound effects, you find like thousands or hundreds of playlists of sound effects. So you can choose 5 of these and put them in your own playlist. And then you play the sound effects, students guess where they are, they guess what is happening, and then you ask them to try to create a story with these. And then in another class, students can make their own playlist of sound effects and create a story, or they make a playlist of sound effects, they play them for the other people in the class, and the other people have to make a story. So again, what we're using is different media here, yeah? If you do have Spotify is available where you are, yeah? The free Spotify, yeah. So if you use Spotify, just check sound effects. They have everything, like even they'll have like horror movie sound effects. So if you wanted to make a Halloween story, you could do that. And then just like anything else on Spotify, you just make your own playlist. All of this would be free, yeah? And if you do sound effects websites, you can, in Google, you can find other websites, but I think Spotify is even easier to just use them. And this works really well in online classes too. Um, Going back to studio, we wanted to get students to think about how they how people tell stories, so we gave examples of people telling stories. And so this was in one of the levels. We called it life stories, where we get students to watch people telling stories of things in a studio kind of thing, and then get students to do the similar stories. I'll give you an example of this one. You tell, as you watch, choose a title for this story. So Isabel's story here. Watch and choose a title.
My husband loves everything to do with technology. And about a month ago, he had this great idea. Honey, he said, we're going to make the house more secure. Okay, I said. Are we going to get a guard dog? No, I'm going to install a smart lock. Everybody has a smart lock these days. Really? Nobody I know has a smart lock. But anyway, we installed it and everything was fine until last Thursday morning.
Okay, so what do you think the title is? Write a title for that story in the chat box. Robbed by a smart lock. Teach husband screws. Oh, tech husband screws. Okay, the horror house. The tech wannabe husband. Security for your home. Excellent. I like some of those better, actually. The title was The Smart Lock. And of course, it's about a smart lock that goes wrong and all these problems happen with it. What I do with the students is I get them to look at how she's telling the story, because we ask the actress to do, like, emphasize with their hands, like so that then students would start using things more, their body more, to tell stories themselves. So they would make their own story and use more hand gestures. If they were going to be nervous, sort of rubbing their hands together, saying that, using like I don't know anyone, pausing, talking about those kinds of elements as well. So we were using also the storytelling as a way to sort of multimedia and storytelling to immerse the learners. Okay, oops, here we are. The last thing that I want to look at is how we used audio differently and different ways of using audio. And one thing that we had done was looking at voice exercises. Yeah, so we do this this is not something new. We do this with teachers do this a lot. So a lot of our audio work that we're doing with students is about pronunciation. When we work on word stress or intonation, exercises like this kind of thing. So stress the underlined words, repeat the sentences. So anything that's listen and repeat, that kind of work. Listen to the phrases. These are different phrases. Notice how we use intonation to show interest. Listen and repeat. Copy the intonation, asking students to do this with the audio. Pay attention to the first letter of the words, d and t, b and p, sort of the voiced and unvoiced consonants. But to sort of immerse students also in the audio, we wanted to try something different. And it happened when we were both at a business lunch at an Italian restaurant. And I went to the men's room at the Italian restaurant. And what was so interesting, that in the men's room and in the bathrooms, they had like this sort of classical music playing in the bathroom. But in the classical music, they just had somebody saying Italian words like buongiorno, arrivederci, spaghetti. And so you were in the bathroom and washing your hands and whatever and thinking, and you were learning a little bit of Italian, and they had this like really lovely sort of Italian classical music. And I thought, that's really kind of neat. Wouldn't that be interesting to have that? So like learning your words with like a kind of musical accompaniment. So it's something we wanted to do for years, which was using music to teach the word lists. So you would teach normally, you would just do your normal stuff, but the students have in their workbook the word lists, and then they have something called vocabulary beats. And vocabulary beats are the word lists put to music in the same way that we would hear the Italian words going to music. So for example, sorry, here it is. Let me just see if I can get this going. So the idea here is that the students listen and circle the words that they hear. Sorry, let me just play the audio as well here.
Play the piano. Motorbike. I can play the piano. And ride a motorbike. I can play the piano and ride a motorbike. Rice. Shelf. Cupboard. Is there any rice? Oh.
So you get the idea more or less. What this is more the students, the instructions for the students on their own is take out the word list, listen to, just put on the things and circle the words as you hear them. Or leave this on in the background. You know, go and do, go jogging and have this on your earphones, or just do things around the house. Just put it on, leave it on in the background, just like the radio or something, and have it on in the house. And as you're doing things, just sort of be repeating. So this was another thing that we wanted to sort of experiment with the students, sort of the idea of learning our vocabulary that way. This is more something that they would do on their own than what you would do in the class. Although you could sort of do what I was doing there, display the words, get students to listen to the audio, and then tick off the words or write the words that they heard. So I want to, it's amazing how quickly an hour goes by. We're almost at the end, and I want to give a couple of moments for questions. My talk today was about multimedia and immersing multimedia. And to begin, I wanted to draw a distinct, a way that the classroom and the use of multimedia in the classroom, it makes the classroom a bit like an actor's rehearsal space. So kind of summing up. We looked at examples of pair work and group work that we had been experimenting with to warm students up to this kind of stuff, and the ways that that could be done online. And then the main thing was role play and improvisation, and how using video and audio we could help immerse learners to help support them when they were doing their little conversations, their little audio things, the things they can do in English. We also looked at storytelling and the life stories and the way, like the smart lock thing, very briefly, and how using video in that way to get students to think about how they can tell a story. And finally, looking at voice exercises and the things like the vocabulary beats. All of these examples were from this, the course Studio, which is I'm very proud of, so I'm not very proud of having written. That's out right now. It's just beginning to come out. It's come out in American English and in British English. But I think a lot of these ideas are things that you can do yourself before you get the book if you want to experiment with them. But if you follow us at our website, you can get samples of the stuff that we've done, see other videos and so on. And I'm sure my colleagues will say more about this. Here's my contact detail. That's my website and my co-writer's website and the website of this book studio. Thanks again for coming. I look forward to seeing you all one day when I can leave my country, when we can all travel again. In the meantime, please stay safe, enjoy your teaching, and yes, or maybe see you at another one of these things. I'd be happy to participate again with Books and Books. It's been a very smooth experience. Thank you for your